21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piscorik.
"20 years ago, I was in a cubicle. I hated my job. I hated my life. I wanted to smash my head into the wall every day. I hoped a guy in the warehouse would call in so I could get up from my desk and actually get physical and do stuff. Today, I run a dog training company, a dog training franchise, and a wholesale company. And I train people on how to train dogs, help dogs enjoy their best quality of life, and it is one of the most fulfilling things I have ever done in my life." What most people don't know about dog training is there is no accredited institutions. Dog training is a trade. And just like every other trade, you really must apprentice. You must work with master or head trainers and learn what they knew and learn what they know. That's the only way to really learn how to train dogs with different sorts of issues. Early on, I had a dog with aggression, anxiety. He ran away. He peed everywhere. He had all these issues, and it just led me searching for something that works. Today, instead of positive or negative reinforcement or punishment-based training, we use at Tip Top Canine a classical conditioning-based method that's based on Pavlovian conditioning, and it gets excellent results, and it's easy to transfer from the trainer to the client. In addition, we have a documented method that we can take someone through. So anytime someone's learning, whether it's science, whether it's podcasting, whether it's in the medical profession, right? There's a documented method for everything. So why should dog training be any different? If you watch a dog training show, they do something different every single time, but that doesn't seem really repeatable, right? They don't have a system. They're just theatrical, making excellent TV. What we do is systemized. I have a system for training the dog, I have a system for training the human, and I have a system to keep the dog there. With reward-based training, someone is using an object such as food and they're luring dogs into behavior. So say I have a dog that runs away. I take food and I lure the dog to come back to me with food. And that's going to work until it doesn't. So with reward-based training, anytime a higher value reward comes, I'm always going to lose my dog. So for instance, if a squirrel runs in the road and that squirrel's a $50 reward and my biscuit is a $10 reward, well, guess what gets the dog? The $50 reward every single time, right? Now, how some trainers try to fix that is they use negative reinforcement or a punishment-based system. And with that, there's some sort of consequence normally. And so they say, hey, if you chase the squirrel, something negative is going to happen. And that can work, right? And I can teach the dog impulse control. The issue is twofold. One, I may dampen my dog's attitude. So for instance, my wife has a little cavapoo. Right? It's a fluffy little purse dog. You can't use big negatives and punishments on a little purse dog. And then two, it depends on the trainer. So if I have a lady, she's say 65, is she going to be able to be physically rough, or is she going to want to punish her little purse dog? Maybe, maybe not. So there's some negatives. It can work, but there's some negatives. Another approach is classical conditioning-based training. With classical conditioning, there's no reward, there's no punishment. We condition a response. So if you remember back to science class, and some people were sleeping, so I'll give a little refresher. Science class, there was a guy named Pavlov in Russia, and he accidentally stumbled upon classical conditioning. And what that looked like is he was studying digestion in dogs, and all of a sudden one day he realized when my assistants come in and they're wearing a lab coat, the dog starts to salivate. That's weird. And so he did conditioning projects, and he found, hey, when I present the dogs with meat, they salivate. If I simultaneously deliver the meat and ring a bell or a chime or metronome or make a sound or wear a vest, if I condition a secondary thing on top of that first thing that caused the reaction, and I do it enough, eventually I can phase out that food, ring a bell, and still get the response of the salivation. So at Tip Top Canine, we use a similar method of conditioning, except we use a remote training collar, a leash, and a verbal command. And so the remote training collar is a mild muscle stimulation. What that does is it taps the dog on the shoulder and gets their attention. Right? It's not the shock type collars that are used for negative reinforcement or punishment. So I use a mild muscle stim, just enough to barely get the dog's attention. And then I put a leash on the dog. So I go tap, tap, tap on the dog's shoulder electronically, and I have a leash. And the first time the dog feels it, they go, what the heck is that? That's weird. Right? And just like a human, I never have to teach a human to turn around when I tap them on the shoulder. It's just a natural reaction, right? It's the same with the dog. The first time they might go, hey, that's weird. And then if someone turns around, then the human stops tapping. Well, the same with the dog. So I point this leash pressure, say down the right side of the dog's shoulder, and I tap him on the shoulder electronically. The dog is like, hey, that's weird. But then eventually the dog kind of turns a little bit, right? And then that tap stops and the dog goes, interesting, weird. Okay, whatever. After I do that 5 or 10 times, the dog starts to realize, hey, as soon as I move, that tap goes away. I think that guy's tapping me. I think that guy wants my attention. So then pretty soon I can tap once or twice and that dog moves the direction the leash is going and starts to come towards me. Once I can go leash tap and the dog comes to me, leash tap and he comes, I'm starting to condition a response. Well, then I add my third layer of classical conditioning, which is a verbal command. And I go leash tap, word, leash tap, word. So I go leash tap, come, leash tap, come. And I do that 400 or 500 times. Eventually, I drop the leash. I go tap, come. The dog comes to me. 4 to 6 months later, I phase out the little electronic tap, and I just have a dog conditioned to verbal commands. So that's how we use an e-collar-based system of classical conditioning. You might be thinking, hey, that sounds easy. I just grab a collar, point a leash, and the dog magically does stuff. I can start a business. Well, it's a little bit harder than that. There's some nuance to it. That's why we have, a 90-page training manual, right? That's why we have a 6-week training course, longer than any other dog training franchise, where people come in and get fully trained. So learning how to train dogs is one thing. Learning how to train humans is another. Running a business is a whole third beast on its own, right? I've had multiple employees of mine that I personally trained go out and do their own thing and fail. And I know they know how to train dogs because I personally trained them, but they still have that business side, the marketing side, the accounting side. There's other sides to this business, right? So at Tip Top, what we do is first we have people come in. We do 2 weeks of theory training online via Zoom classes. We do a 6-week in-person training, 3 times longer than industry standard, to make sure that they understand the dog training side and the human training side. And then we handhold with the business side. So with franchising, you get 15 years of someone's experience in playbooks and systems, basically day one when you start. And that's the power of franchising. And that's how the franchises are able to succeed, where similar trainers that have the same methodology aren't, because they don't have that back end support. What franchising actually looks like is you pay a fee, like a tip-top franchising fee is $48,000 right now. And then you pay a monthly ongoing fee to support headquarters. Right now, that's 6%. And for that 6% and that fee, you get all the training and all the support. Like our locations, they get marketing support that runs all their digital online ads and does SEO. They get product support. We wholesale everything, deep discount. Like I just bought $30,000, or our team just bought $30,000 worth of leashes, right? You get a call center support. So we answer all of your incoming calls. We book all of your appointments for you and all of your employees, and we do your billing. On top of that, we have multiple sales conferences, training conferences, and business conferences every year for continuing education. So like this morning, we had a consultative sales call for people who are new, who are there learning how to do consultations with clients with their dogs. So around the locations, they were able to jump on a call and get help. That's what you're paying for with a franchise. And that allows you to do what took me 10 years. We now have locations doing it in just 2 to 3. And for that, they pay a small monthly fee. One of our owners, Adam Wilburn, he lives in Owasso, Oklahoma. He operates 2 locations, one in Oklahoma and one in Plano, Texas. He was actually a HVAC, a heating and air technician, before he owned a Tip Top Canine. So he was actually a client, and then he learned we were franchising, and he ended up buying a location. Then he bought a second, and then first quarter of next year, he's planning on buying his third. So what he loved about Tip Top is he always worked for the man. He always worked for a big corporate organization, and all of his hard work equaled someone else's profit. Well, now, if he wants to work 80 hours a week and have less employees, he can stack cash at his house, right? He actually kept his business home-based for 3 years, and then he paid cash for land and put a building on it. But that's his choice, and as an owner, he gets to decide how many employees he has, how much work he does, and what his schedule is. When you own a franchise, you're the boss, you're in control of your schedule, but corporate is supporting you. So right now, we're expanding. We're at 20 locations. We're on our way the next few years to 40. We have a lot of interest right now. We already have multiple locations and units planned. We support all of our locations though. So because of the heavy support, we're only adding about 8 to 10 a year. And some of those are already our internal growth from other locations. You know, a third of our locations own 2 or more units. And part of the reason is we do a lot of the heavy lifting on the back end. So on the back end, we do a call center. So it doesn't matter how many employees they have. They never have to train people to answer the phone. We answer all their calls, 90% of their customer issues we can handle, and the billing. And if they go to 3 or 4 locations, we have a marketing team that's handling all those locations for them. Like I said, we also handle all their product support. And they can always send their trainers to corporate, or we can send trainers out if they're explosively growing. What that enables our owners to do is to be able to expand and have that support to expand. Now, one thing that really sets us apart is the amount of time we take in training our locations initially. So the industry standard is either 14 or 21 days of initial training. We do 6 weeks because we're taking people who are normally green. They don't know much about dog training. They haven't had experience. And we're fully training to them to where they are now confident to actually show someone else what to do. Where someone else, it may take them 3 or 4 years before they're actually confident enough to train other trainers. We spend a lot of extra time front end loading that training because our goal is we partner with you and you open up multiple locations if that's your desire. But to do that, you have to feel really confident in what you're doing, and our training will inspire that confidence. If you're interested in more information on owning a franchise, go to tiptopk9.com. That's TIPTOPK and the number 9.com. Click on franchising and fill out the form and get on the phone with one of our team members and they can get you some more information on our process.
21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piscorik.
Imagine a space where triumphs, trials, and tales of entrepreneurship come alive. Welcome to the 21st Century Entrepreneurship Podcast, a gold awarded journey hosted by Martin Piscorik, connecting with listeners in 95 countries and ranking in the top 0.5% of all podcasts. Join our exclusive community, elevate your perspective, and embark on the path to success.